Hey, this is MJ, and in today's tutorial I'll be showing you how to make a V-stitch pullover. So the yarn that I'm using is Comfy Fingering Weight, and that is a number 1. And this is a blend of Pima cotton and acrylic. The color that I'm going to be working with today is Seafoam. You'll need 2 hook sizes for this pattern. I'm going to be using a 3.5 millimeter and a 4.5 millimeter, and these are dots hooks from We Crochet. So I have the link in the description box for the yarn as well as the hooks that can be purchased from We Crochet. We're going to be starting with our collar, and it's worked in single crochets in the back loop only, and this is what it's going to look when you have it complete. So this will go around the neck, and we will slip stitch it together to start working on our yoke. So with our 3.5 millimeter crochet hook, let's make a slip knot and put that on our hook. And we'll begin with a chain of 9. In the second chain from the hook, so there's our first chain, our second chain, we'll work a single crochet and work a single crochet in each chain across. Chain 1 and turn, and work a single crochet through the back loops only. So it's a good idea to count your stitches as you go. Chain 1 and turn. You're going to have 8 stitches for each row. Chain 1 and turn, and you'll continue working rows until you have 120. So here is my 120 rows worked, and I'm going to measure it out for you so you can make sure you're on track. So it is about 22 inches. Also, when you're counting, I always like to count by 2s. So 2, 4, 6. So the ridges are 2 rows, and that just helps you count. So chain 1, I'm going to put the right sides together, and I'm going to slip stitch this. So you're going to work through the back loop, going across to that starting chain, and slip stitch across 8. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm going to chain 1, and then I'm going to flip that seam so it's to the inside. And now I'm going to work a stitch per row. So you'll need to work 120 stitches around. And how I like to keep track of my stitches is I know that one row is going to have a thicker end to it. So there's stitch number 3. And then the next row is going to have more just a single loop. There's stitch number 4. We're back to the thicker section. 5, and then a loop, a single loop again. Stitch number 6, and I'm going to continue that all the way around. Okay, so I've worked all the way around, and I'm going to slip stitch in that first single crochet to join. Just making sure I get the right stitch here. You can always mark it with a stitch marker if that is confusing. And now we're going to start into our V-stitches. And you can do this round with the smaller hook, or you can change it over now to the larger. It's just a little harder to work into the stitches with the larger one. So if you want to work this round, it's not going to make a big deal as long as you switch over to the larger hook for the next round. So I'm going to chain 3, and I'm going to work a double crochet in that same stitch. And this is going to be my first V-stitch. And I'm going to grab some markers. I will mark that first V-stitch. I'm going to chain 1. I'm going to skip 3, 1, 2, 3, and then I'm going to work a V, which is going to be a double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, chain 1, skip 3, 1, 2, 3, and work a double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, chain 1, skip 3, 1, 2, 3, and work another V. So a V-stitch throughout this pattern will be referred to as a double crochet, chain 1, and double crochet. Chain 1, skip 3, 1, 2, 3, another V-stitch, 1, 2, 3, chain 1, 1, 2, 3, V-stitch, and I think I have 5 now. Chain 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that will be, this section here will be the sleeve. So we'll skip another 3, 1, 2, 3. I'm going to do another V-stitch, and I am going to mark it . And we will see why I'm marking all of these stitches on the next round. Because basically this round is just making our V's. The marked stitches are just going to show us where we're separating each section. So that will just help us on the next round. So now our front will have 8 V-stitches between our marked stitches. So we'll continue with that chain 1, skip 3, 1, 2, 3, and a V-stitch in the next, 1, 2, 3, V-stitch. Okay, so we want to have 8 V-stitches, and then I'll meet you up again. Okay, so I've worked 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I'll chain 1, skip 3, 1, 2, 3, V-stitch in the next, and I will mark this V-stitch as well. Chain 1, 1, 2, 3, and a V in the 4th. So I will now do another 5 for this sleeve. Okay, so I've worked across 5. I've chained 1, skip 3, 1, 2, 3, and a V, and we'll mark this one as well. Grab another purple. Chain 1, and now we're just going to be working our V-stitches across the remaining section, which should give us another 8 so that our fronts and our backs are equal. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and you should be ending with 3 stitches. If you haven't, there is a good chance that you have maybe missed a stitch or skipped too many. It's really easy to get off with all the skipping that we're doing. So just retrace your steps and make sure you've done it all correctly. So now I'm going to chain 1 and I'm going to slip stitch in the starting V. I'm going to chain 3 and double crochet. Okay, so now that counts as a V. So I have a V in the V. I'm going to chain 1 and I'll be working a V in the chain 1 spaces now. Chain 1, a V in the next chain 1 space, chain 1, V in the next chain 1 space, and we're going to continue this across to our next marked V-stitch. Okay, so I have chained 1 already, and now in the marked V-stitch we'll work a V. So for every other space, we're not working into any of the V's, we're working in the chain 1 spaces, except when we get to the marked V's. Then we will work a V in that V-stitch. Chain 1, and then in the next chain 1 space, so now you can move these markers up as you go. At this point, it's a little easier to tell as you work where your V is, but your V is worked in the V's. But if it just makes it easier so that you don't mess up, just keep moving the markers up as you go. So I'm going to continue that around. So for every chain 1 space, we're working a V-stitch chain 1. In the marked stitches, we're doing a V in the V and complete that around. Okay, so I've worked all the way around. We're back to our starting V, and I'm going to slip stitch, chain 3, and double crochet, chain 1, and we're just repeating now round 2, which makes this pattern so quick and easy to work up. Don't be intimidated by this fingering weight yarn. It's going to make this top so light and airy with beautiful drape, and because of the stitch pattern, it works up super fast even though you're using a thinner yarn. You can see it's going to be nice and light, perfect for summer weather. So I'm going to work this one across, but then I'm going to let you continue to work your yoke up off camera. I'll do mine off camera and you can work yours up and pause the video So you can try this on as you go. You can follow the sizing that I have in the pattern, whichever you prefer, because it is a top down and you can try it on. You can really customize the fit. If you want it looser or tighter, really you can kind of play around with how you want the fit by trying it on. And then you can just keep moving those markers, working those V's in the V stitches as you go. So I'm going to continue that now off camera, and then I'll meet you back up when I have my rounds complete. Okay, so once you have worked the rounds needed for the size that you're working on, we're going to separate the body and sleeves. So if we count, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 rounds. So what I'm going to do, I've already slip stitched into our starting V to join. Now I'm going to mark it with a stitch marker, and this is just going to let you know where you need to come back. So we're going to just add a marker there. We're going to skip over the sleeve section, which is the next section, and we want to join this together so that we have our sleeve opening. So we need to find that V where we're working the V's in the V's, which is the corner. And I like to do this here this round. It just attaches them, makes that space nice and tight so we don't have to do it after the fact. Okay, so I'm going to fasten this off. Okay, so that's joined up. You're now skipping over the next section, finding your next corner V, and I'm going to join my yarn into there. So I'm going to put a slip knot on my hook. Join that, and then we're going to do the same thing. So we're skipping over the sleeve section and slip stitching into the next V so that we're all joined up. Fasten off. Okay, so you can take a look at it now. You can try it on at this point before you progress to make sure your fit is good. So make sure that the armholes are big enough. Make sure that the bust is big enough. If the bust isn't even big enough, you could always, but your arms are good, you could always add some increases after this point. So let's just discuss some tips if you wanted to modify it. Let's say that you have a bigger bust and you have smaller arms. You could always try this section on as you go to get the arm sleeve amount that you would like, but this could still be a little bit too tight around the bust. You could always add some increases. When you're doing increases, I suggest spacing them out. So count how many V stitches you have and then divide it by how many increases you want to do. So if you want to do 4 increases, divide it out so that you can evenly space them around. To do an increase, you're just going to add 2 V stitches into a chain 1 space. So really simple to do, really easy to modify if you want to change up the pattern. This will be just a basic standard body type. So I'm not going to do any increases on the body. I'm just going to keep the body as it's increased to it's big enough and the sleeves are big enough, and then I'm just going to continue from there. Okay, so here is my marker. Now you can weave these tails in now, make sure that they're nice and secure, or you can just continue, but it is, they are kind of loose, so it is always a good idea to get them dealt with so that they don't keep coming loose on you. so now what we want to do is take a look. So this is, we joined 2 V's together. I don't want to be doing any stitches in between these V's. I only want to go to the chain 1 spaces. So I'm going to come over to my next chain 1 space, which is right here. So I'm going to put a slip knot on my hook. Okay, I'm going to join into that chain 1 space. I'm going to chain 3. Whoops. Work a double crochet. So this is my beginning V, chain 1, and I'm working V stitches into every chain 1 space around the body. Okay, so I'm going to count my V stitches. I'm going to work all the way around. I'm going to meet you over at our last chain 1 space. Okay, and when we get here as well, we're going to skip over these V's. We're going to go right into the next V stitch. We're not going to work between those. Okay, so we've skipped right over that section, and we can use these tails at the end to seam some of this together so that it's not such a big space. Okay, so I'm just about around. I'm going to remove this marker. This is my last chain 1 space here, and I'm at 52 V stitches. 26 for the front, 26 for the back. I'm going to chain 1. And now what I want to do, so we don't have any join line at all, I'm going to work in a continuous round. So you're going to want to mark your rounds. So we've already done 1. So I'm going to use 2 stitch markers just so I can really make sure that I'm staying on track. So I'm going to mark that first stitch. So that's row 1. And then I'll be using the marker as I go to mark my first stitch. So we're just going to go over to this first chain 1 space. So we're skipping over this V, and we're going to work a V. Okay, so we're going to have some gapping that we'll need to sew at the end, but this way we don't have to join it. We don't have to worry about there being any unsightly seams because I'm working this one already in the round and not turning. I think this is the best way to do it. Now, if we had started out the pattern with turning, we could have had a join under the arm, but this way is really easy to just eliminate a join altogether. But what I want you to do, I'm going to chain 1, is mark the first V of every round so we can kind of track our rows a little bit better. So here is going to be row 2. I'm going to work all the way around. So we're working V stitches in the chain 1 spaces, just following our normal pattern. Now you can make the top as long as you want to at this point. You can try it on as you go. Keep going until you get it the length that you want. I'm going to keep mine the length that I did the short sleeve top because I really like this length for summer. So I'm going to keep it fairly short, but feel free to make it as long as you want. So I'm going to go with a total of 16 rounds, but I'm going to finish this round with you and just show you again how to move across, and so I'll work around and meet you back up. Okay, so I'm coming around to my marker, so I am going to do a V in that last chain 1 space, chain 1, and I'm going to skip over the marked stitch, chain 1. So as you can see, we're going to keep shifting as we go. So I just move the marker up to the first V of this round, and I'm going to continue working this until I have my 16 rounds complete. Then once I reach that point, I'll meet you back up again. We're going to do a round of single crochet, pulling in the waistband and completing that waist. So it's going to look then like this when we get to then that point. I'm going to complete that off camera, and then I'll meet you up for the band. Okay, so let's take a look at what's happened with our rounds as we have continued to circle around. So here was round 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Did I end up doing an extra? Let me just count that again. Okay, so I did end up doing 17, so I just got off with my count, but that's okay. Whatever we do is fine. It's not going to be a big deal. So what I'm going to do here, this was, I already finished this off, so I'm going to pull back. So, okay, so once you have finished your last stitch, so my marker would have been here, I'm going to chain 1, and I'm going to do a half double crochet, chain 1, half double crochet, and then I'm going to slip stitch into the next, should chain 1, slip stitch to join. Then I'm going to fasten off. I don't want to work my band in this location because it's going to be to my front, and I don't want the join in the front. We're going to want to do it like back here over more down from our original underarm section. Okay, so let's put a slip knot on our hook. And coming down here, pick your cluster or your V-stitch. I'm going to go with this one right here. What we're going to do is work a single crochet in the double crochet, a single crochet in the chain 1 space, single crochet in the other double. So you're doing 2 single crochets per V-stitch, and we're just going to skip the space between the V's. So this is going to slightly pull in the band. If you wanted the band to stay wider, then work in those chain 1 spaces between the V's as well. Okay, but I want mine to pull in a little bit at the waist since this is waist length. Okay, so once you get all the way around, you can slip stitch to join. So change over to your smaller hook, and then you're going to chain out the width you would like your band. So I'm going with 15. And then you're going to work a single crochet in the second chain from the hook and in each chain. Once you've worked all the way down, we're going to skip over that first stitch, slip stitch in the next 2. We're going to turn. We're going to skip the slip stitches and then work single crochets through the back loop only. So you're working the band, but joining it down to the bottom stitches as you go. So you're going to have the same number of rows as you have stitches along the bottom of the sweater. We'll chain one and turn, single crochet in the back loop only, back down the row. And then we'll work, once you work all the way down, you're going to slip stitch into the next 2 stitches along that base row, turn, and just continue working this all the way around. So once you get that complete, I will meet you back up and then we can join the band together. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to start the sleeve. So we ended our sleeve on our right side. So first off, we need to begin working the sleeve to the wrong side. So I'm gonna go to the inside of the sleeve and we can see here where we've joined up those V stitches, okay? I have my marker in here. I'm actually gonna use this marker. So here are those V stitches that are joined up. We're gonna join into the next chain 1 space over here to the left. So I'm gonna grab my yarn. I'm going to put a slip knot on my hook. I'm gonna join into that chain 1 space to the right or to the left, and I'm going to chain 3. And I'm going to work a double crochet. Chain 1. So there's our first V stitch. Now the chain 1 spaces between the V stitches, I'm going to work a V stitch. Chain 1. Chain 1 space between the V stitch all the way around. I'm also just going to mark this as my first row. I find it's just easier to keep track if I do that. So I've worked around 23 V stitches. Okay, I'm coming up to that V that we have joined here, so you can see that. Make sure you're not going into any of these spaces. We're now going to slip stitch into our starting V stitch to join, which we have marked. I don't think I chained 1 yet. So chain 1, slip stitch to join. I'm going to chain 3. I'm going to turn my work. And now I'm going to work a double crochet in the same space, so that counts as our first V. And this tail we can use to just sew this up a little bit so the hole's not so big under the arm when we're finished. Let's go back around a V stitch in the chain 1 spaces between the V's for one more round, and then we're going to do some decreases. So I'm going to work that around, still keeping our count at 23 V stitches. Okay, so I'm coming around, finishing my last V stitch. And I'm leaving this here because this just helps me count how many rounds I've done. So I'm going to chain 1, slip stitch to join. So that's round 2. We're going to chain 3 and turn. And round 3 is where I'm going to start my decreases. Now you don't have to decrease your sleeve at all. You could keep it this size, no problem. Or you can narrow out the sleeve a bit. So I've done my double crochet for my first V, chain 1. I'm now going to decrease over the next 2 chain 1 spaces between these V's. And I'm just going to do it really simply. I have already chained 1, so I'm going to double crochet, chain 1, and double crochet in the next. Okay, so even though this is spread out, this is going to count as a V-stitch. So when you come back around the next time, you're working in this chain one and then the chain one on this side. So this is counting now as just one V-stitch. Now we're going to go all the way around until we have 3 chain one spaces remaining, and we'll do another decrease before we join up again. Okay, so I have worked around. Now I have 3 chain one spaces left. So we're going to do the decrease over the next 2. So double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, and then I'm going to chain 1 and finish with just a regular V in the last. So now I have reduced down to 21 V stitches. Chain 1 and we'll slip stitch to join, chain 3 and turn. Now for the short sleeve version here that I didn't do any decreases on that round 3. So let me see here where we join. So I did 3 rounds, but I didn't do any decreases, and then I added a cuff. Now our V-neck tutorial does show the short sleeve with the little cuff, so I will link that tutorial if you want to do the short sleeve, but you will have the written directions in the pattern. Also for the cardigan, I did a 3/4 length sleeve where I didn't do any decreases, and I will also link that video in the description box if you would prefer a 3/4 length sleeve and you want to copy those directions exactly, but also in the written pattern, I'll have that written all out for you. And you can do anything in between. So you could go even a little bit longer than this short sleeve, go all the way to the 3/4 length, or do the full length sleeve like I'm going to show you in this tutorial. Chain 1. I'm going to slip stitch in our starting V to join. I'm going to chain 3 and turn. So you can add as many decreases to the sleeve as you want. If you want to really narrow it out, you can also try it on as you go to kind of get the right fit. I don't want to narrow mine off too much because I find for myself, I'd rather the sleeve a little bit loose, that it's not clinging to my arm. I find that will make it feel a little bit warmer than I want. So if it's loose, it's going to feel a little bit more light and airy and not feel as warm as if it's tight to my skin. Now, that's a personal preference. So if you want it to come down that it's narrowing out by the time you get to the cuff, then you can do that. So I've worked for my sleeve a total of 32 rounds, and that works out a nice length for my arm. But again, you can try on as you go to find the right length for your fit, because you could have a little longer arm or a little shorter arm. You might need to add a couple more rounds or do a couple less rounds. So I'm going to continue now. I'm going to work my rounds off camera, then I'll meet you. Okay, so what I'd like you to do, I'm just looking at my other sleeve and I wanted to double check how many rounds I did in between. So I did go with 1, 2, 3 rounds before I did another decrease to kind of space it out a little bit more. So that's what I'm going to make sure I do the same on the other sleeve as well. Okay, so I've worked 3 more rounds. I'm going to slip stitch to join, chain 3 and turn. work a double crochet. So there is the first V, chain 1, and we're going to do another decrease across the next 2 chain 1 spaces. So double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, chain 1, and then we'll continue around until we have 3 chain 1 spaces, and we'll do another decrease. Okay, so we have 3 chain 1 spaces remaining. We'll do another decrease. So double crochet, double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, chain 1, and we'll end with a V in the last. Chain 1, slip stitch to join, chain 3, do a double, and just as you're coming back around, just want to mention again, make sure that you're counting this as a V, so don't do a stitch in between here or you're not going to be decreasing. You're just putting your V's on either side of it. So you should have 19 V stitches for this size, and I'm going to keep it at that many V's as I work around. Okay, so I'm going to continue now working 32 rounds in total, and once I have that done, I'll meet you up and I'll show you how to do the cuff as well. Okay, so I've completed working 32 rounds, and I find adding that stitch marker at the beginning just helps me to count down to make sure I have the right number of rounds. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I have a total of 32. So now what we're going to do is pull this in for the cuff. Now, if you want that the cuff doesn't pull in like what I'm showing here with the one I'm wearing, you could leave it like this. But if you want to pull it in, we're going to skip some stitches as we work around so that we have a tighter cuff that's going to fit more closer to your wrist. So I'm going to chain 1, and then I'm going to work a single crochet in the chain 1 of the V, and I'm also going to work a single crochet in the chain 1 space. Okay, and I'm going to do that all the way around. So now once you get all the way around, I'm going to slip stitch in the first single crochet to join, and I'm going to change over to the smaller hook. So our 3.5 millimeter, and now we're going to start the cuff. So I'm going to chain out a total of 15. And then we'll work a single crochet in the second chain from the hook and in each chain. So again, this is going to be 14 stitches, which is that width of our cuff, same as what I'm wearing. If you want to alter that, you're going to alter the length of this chain. So once you get all the way down, you're going to skip that first stitch. So that first stitch accounts for this row. Then we'll slip stitch in the next 2, turn, and work single crochets through the back loop. Okay, so this is worked just like the band, and you're going to work it all the way around. So you'll have as many rows as you have stitches, so each size is a little bit different. But if you want a tighter cuff or a looser cuff, by changing the number of stitches you have around here, you can accomplish that. So if you are working on one of the bigger sizes and want a tighter cuff than what the pattern calls for, you can always just tighten it up to however many you want. So now we'll chain 1 and turn, work back. Okay, and when you get all the way down your row, you're going to slip stitch to the next 2 stitches, So here and here, and just repeat all the way around. So now once you get all the way around with your cuff, we're going to have a final slip stitch. Work single crochets through the back loop. We're going to chain one and then we're going to slip stitch it together. So I like to just fold it so that I get my right sides facing. And then we're just slip stitching, going through the first row and going through the stitch. And just work a slip stitch down through every stitch. So one on this side, going over to the other side. I like to just do a slip stitch, but you could always fasten off and use a yarn needle to sew it as well. Then you can fasten off and weave in the tail. So any of the gapping that you have under the arm, you're just going to go to the inside, take your yarn needle and just whip stitch it together, weave in your tails. And at this point, we've completed everything. You just may want to give the sweater a wet block, or you can steam it. For washing, I do suggest hand washing, but I have followed the label instructions on my cardigan version of the top, and it did come out okay by washing it on a delicate cycle and tumbling it dry low. But if you want to prolong the life of your sweater, I do suggest laying it flat to dry. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, please give this video a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel and tap the bell to stay updated on all my new videos and tutorials. Make sure to check the description box below this video for all the links. Thanks so much, guys. Have an awesome day.